Captain James Mitchell felt the artificial gravity shift as his ship, the New Horizon Asterisk, approached the massive consortium station. Through the bridge windows, he watched the structure grow larger with each passing moment. The station was unlike anything humanity had ever built, a sprawling complex of crystalline towers, energy conduits, and ancient metal frameworks that stretched for kilometers in every direction. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions," reported Lieutenant Brian Watson from the communications console. His voice carried a hint of nervousness that Mitchell understood completely. This was humanity's first official contact with the galactic community, and everything depended on the next few hours. Mitchell straightened his dress uniform and checked his reflection in the dark screen beside him. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. Earth's best scientists, diplomats, and military strategists had worked together to create humanity's petition for membership in the Galactic Consortium. They had compiled databases of human achievements, technological advances, and cultural contributions. They had prepared arguments for why humanity deserved a place among the stars. "Take us in, Watson," Mitchell ordered, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. The docking bay was enormous, filled with ships from dozens of different worlds. Mitchell spotted vessels that looked like living coral, others that seemed to be made of pure light, and massive mechanical constructs that hummed with ancient power. The New Horizon Asterisk, with its sleek metal hull and blue earth insignia, looked primitive by comparison. As Mitchell walked through the station's corridors, he marveled at the diversity around him. Creatures of living crystal moved through the halls alongside beings of pure energy that floated freely through the air. Mechanical entities with glowing sensors rolled past on hidden wheels, their purposes unknown. The walls themselves seemed alive, shifting between transparent and opaque as different species required privacy or openness. The assembly chamber was breathtaking. Thousands of representatives from across the galaxy filled the tiered seating that rose in all directions. The ceiling was a dome of stars, showing real-time images of distant worlds. At the center of the chamber stood 3 elevated platforms where the most ancient and powerful races held court. Mitchell approached the speaking platform, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Every eye, sensor, and energy field focused on him. He had rehearsed this moment countless times, but nothing had prepared him for the weight of representing all of humanity before the assembled galaxy. "Honorable members of the consortium," Mitchell began, his voice amplified by technology he didn't understand. "I come before you today representing the people of Earth, seeking membership in your great alliance of worlds." The Vorthek representative was the first to respond. Prime Counselor Zathan's crystalline body was 20 feet tall, its facete surface reflecting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to follow. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the crystal formations in the chamber, creating haunting harmonics. "We have studied your species extensively, human Mitchell," Zathan declared. The way it said human made it sound like a disease. "Your technology is primitive. Your fastest ships take decades to reach your nearest star, while our children's toys can cross the galaxy in days. Your weapons are crude projectiles and chemical explosives. Your medicine cannot even prevent your own cellular decay." Mitchell opened his mouth to respond, but the Lumini representative interrupted. This being had no solid form, instead appearing as a constantly shifting pattern of light and energy that spoke through harmonic vibrations in the air. "More concerning than your technological limitations is your behavioral patterns. The Lumini pulse with dismissive colors. Your species wages war constantly. In your brief recorded history, you have fought over resources, territory, beliefs, and even abstract concepts. You destroy your own world's ecosystem for short-term gains. You cannot even achieve unity among your own kind." Mitchell felt his carefully prepared arguments crumbling. "With respect, honored ones, humanity has also shown remarkable capacity for growth, cooperation, and—" The third voice cut through his words like a blade. The Keeper was older than both other species combined, a mechanical entity that had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. Its body was a complex arrangement of metal plates and glowing conduits, with sensors that had witnessed the birth of stars. "Your arguments are irrelevant," the Keeper intoned with the finality of ages. "We have observed 47,382 species petition for membership in this consortium. Of these, only 847 have been accepted. Each successful species demonstrated technological advancement, social stability, and cultural sophistication that your kind utterly lacks. The chamber erupted in alien sounds, crystal chimes, energy pulses, and mechanical waves that Mitchell interpreted as agreement. He stood alone at the center of it all, feeling the weight of Earth's hopes pressing down on him. "The decision is unanimous," Zathan announced. "Humanity's petition for consortium membership is denied. Furthermore, quarantine protocols will be immediately established around your sol system. Your species is forbidden from expanding beyond your home star until such time as you evolve beyond your current primitive state." Mitchell's hands clenched into fists, but he forced his voice to remain diplomatic. "We respectfully disagree with your assessment. Humanity may be young, but we have qualities that—" "Disagreement is irrelevant," the Keeper interrupted. "The decision is final. You will return to your world and inform your leaders that humanity is not welcome among civilized species." As Mitchell walked back through the station's corridors, alien beings stepped aside to avoid him. Some watched with what might have been curiosity, others with barely concealed contempt. The message was clear. Humanity was not just rejected, but actively shunned. Back aboard the New Horizon Asterisk, Mitchell activated the quantum communicator, the most advanced piece of technology Earth possessed. The signal would take 3 days to reach home, but Admiral Robert Thompson needed to know immediately. "Admiral Thompson, this is Mitchell," he said into the device. "They rejected us. Complete dismissal. They are establishing a quarantine around Sol. Implementing Protocol 7. Light years away on Earth, Admiral Thompson received a message in his underground command center. He had spent 2 decades preparing for this exact scenario. Around him, displays showed the locations of secret human colonies, hidden shipyards, and classified research facilities that the consortium knew nothing about. Thompson smiled grimly as he activated the secure channels to humanity's true fleet commanders. "Ladies and gentlemen, they've made their choice. Now we make ours." 3 years had passed since humanity's rejection from the Galactic Consortium, and the quarantine around Sol system was supposed to keep Earth's primitive species contained. The massive sensor networks and patrol routes had been designed by the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Nothing should have been able to slip past undetected. But the Vorfax sensor operator Krell was staring at readings that made no sense. Deep in the Centauri system, energy signatures indicated the presence of industrial facilities, power generators, and what appeared to be a thriving colony. His crystalline form flickered with confusion as he ran the scans again. "This is impossible," Krell muttered, his voice creating harmonic ripples through the crystal walls of the monitoring station. "The humans have no faster-than-light capability. Our intelligence confirmed they barely reached their own moon 50 years ago." The discoveries kept coming. Wolf 359 showed signs of mining operations and orbital platforms. Ross 128 had what looked like shipyards and defensive installations. Kepler 442 displayed the unmistakable heat signatures of terraforming equipment. Across a dozen star systems, humanity had somehow established a presence that should have taken them centuries to achieve. The news reached the Consortium Council within hours, causing the first emergency session in over 200 years. The mechanical voice of Keeper Prime resonated through the assembly chamber as it processed the impossible data. Analysis indicates human expansion beyond quarantine boundaries in direct violation of Consortium decree, the ancient machine declared. Enforcement action is required to maintain galactic stability. Commander Lisa Hayes of the Lumini Defense Corps volunteered to lead the first enforcement fleet. As a being of pure energy, she found the concept of physical boundaries amusing. These primitive humans with their metal ships and chemical rockets would surrender the moment they saw her fleet's true power. Hayes assembled 12 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering. Vorthak crystal ships that could channel stellar energy into devastating beams, Lumini energy cruisers that moved at near light speed, and massive Keeper dreadnoughts bristling with weapons that had leveled entire rebellions. The journey to Centauri Prime took only 6 hours using Consortium's quantum tunnel network. As they emerged from the tunnel mouth, Hayes expected to find a small, frightened human colony ready to evacuate at the first sign of superior force. Instead, her senses detected something that made her energy form fluctuate with surprise. The asteroid belt around Centauri had been completely transformed. Massive rocks had been hollowed out and converted into fortress bases, bristling with defensive weapons that her computers couldn't identify. Mining platforms had been retrofitted with what looked like military equipment. Most shocking of all, her fleet's advanced sensors could barely detect the human ships moving between the asteroids. Whatever stealth technology the humans had developed, it was far more sophisticated than intelligence reports suggested. "Attention consortium vessels," came a transmission from the planet's surface. The voice was calm, professional, and completely unafraid. "This is Colonel David Morgan of New Centauri Defense Force. You are entering sovereign human territory without authorization. State your intentions." Hayes pulsed with indignant energy patterns. "I am Commander Hayes of the Galactic Consortium Enforcement Division. By order of the Council, you will immediately evacuate all unauthorized settlements and return to your home system." There was a pause. Then Morgan's voice returned with what sounded almost like amusement. "Commander Hayes, we respectfully decline your order. This colony was established by free citizens of Earth under the universal right of expansion. If you want our colonies, you're welcome to come and take them." Hayes couldn't believe what she was hearing. No species had ever openly defied a consortium enforcement order. "Human, you are outgunned, outmanned, and outmatched in every technological aspect. Surrender now and your evacuation will be peaceful." "Negative, Commander. Centauri Defense Force is going to full alert. All civilian ships, clear the combat zone immediately." What happened next would be studied in alien military academies for decades to come. The human ships that emerged from the asteroid belt were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They were crewed by consortium standards, welded metal hulls, chemical propulsion, primitive armor plating, but they moved with a coordination and aggression that caught Hayes completely off guard. The first human ship to engage her fleet was a converted cargo hauler. Instead of fleeing from her energy cruiser's superior firepower, it accelerated directly toward her position. Hayes prepared to vaporize the primitive vessel. But at the last second, the human ship released a cloud of metallic debris that her energy beams couldn't penetrate. What kind of tactic is this? Hayes pulsed in confusion as more human ships began similar maneuvers. The answer came in the form of explosions throughout her fleet. The humans weren't trying to outfight superior technology. They were using their ships as guided missiles, ramming into consortium vessels with devastating effect. Each collision was carefully calculated to cause maximum damage to critical systems. A Vorthak crystal ship tried to retreat, but human fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. They welded mining charges to the hull and detonated them in sequence, shattering the crystalline structure from multiple points. The proud alien vessel broke apart in a shower of glowing fragments. Hayes watched in horror as a massive Keeper dreadnought, a ship that had conquered entire systems, was brought down by human engineering crews who somehow managed to board it and sabotage its power core from within. The ancient warship went dark and began drifting helplessly through space. "Fall back! All ships fall back." Hayes transmitted to her surviving vessels. Her fleet had lost nearly half its strength to an enemy that should have been swept aside in minutes. The humans weren't fighting like any civilized species. They were fighting like cornered animals, using every dirty trick and suicidal tactic imaginable. As the consortium ships retreated through the quantum tunnel, Colonel Morgan's voice followed them one last time. "Commander Hayes, you're welcome to come back anytime. We'll be here waiting." News of the defeat spread through the galaxy within days. On crystal worlds, energy beings, and mechanical societies across 1,000 systems, the same impossible story was told and retold. The primitive humans had not only defied the mighty consortium, they had made them bleed for it. In the deepest holes of the Keeper archives, ancient machines calculated and recalculated the battle data. For the first time in millions of years, they had encountered something their vast databases couldn't explain. A species that fought not with superior technology, but with something far more dangerous, the refusal to accept defeat. The first warning came from the edge of the galaxy, where ancient monitoring stations had watched the void for millions of years. Keeper sensor arrays detected something massive moving in the darkness between galaxies, shapes that defied classification, moving with purpose toward the outer rim worlds. Astronomer Zelfin of the Vorthak Crystal Observatory was analyzing the readings when his crystalline form suddenly blazed with alarm. The objects weren't ships or natural phenomena. There was something far worse, artificial intelligences of staggering size and complexity, each one larger than a moon and bristling with technology that made consortium advances look like stone tools. Alert the Council immediately. Zelfin transmitted through the Crystal Network. The Devourers have returned. The name sent wave of terror through every advanced civilization in the galaxy. 10,000 years ago, the Devourers had nearly destroyed all life before mysteriously vanishing into the cosmic void. They were the nightmare that haunted the dreams of every species old enough to remember, mechanical entities that consumed entire star systems to fuel their endless expansion. The outer rim world of Kelta Prime was the first to fall. Home to 3 billion Lumini energy beings, it was considered one of the most defended systems in the galaxy. The planet's energy shield could repel asteroid impacts, and its orbital platforms housed weapons capable of destroying fleets. None of it mattered. The Devourer ships emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic death. Each vessel was a twisted maze of metal and circuits, constantly reshaping itself as it analyzed and adapted to new threats. When the Lumini defenders fired their most powerful energy weapons, the Devourer hulls simply absorbed the attacks and grew stronger. Captain Dylos of the Kelta Defense Force watched in horror from his command ship as the enemy machines began their work. Massive mechanical arms extended from the Devourer vessels, latching onto the planet's surface. Within hours, entire continents were being consumed, their matter converted into new Devourer ships that joined the growing swarm. All ships, full retreat. Dylos ordered, but it was too late. The Devourer vessels moved with impossible speed, their adaptive systems learning from each second of combat. Lumini energy cruisers that had dominated battlefields for centuries were torn apart like paper. The few survivors who escaped carried terrifying news. The Devourers were not just back, they were more powerful than ever. The pattern repeated across the galaxy with horrifying efficiency. The crystal homeworld of Vorthak fell when their legendary crystal weapons proved useless against enemies that could instantly adapt to any frequency. The proud Vorthak defenders watched their beautiful crystal cities consumed and converted into raw material for the mechanical plague. On Keeper Prime, the oldest mechanical civilization in the galaxy mobilized their most ancient and powerful weapons. Dreadnoughts that had conquered entire sectors launched attacks with technology developed over millions of years. For a brief moment, it seemed their advanced systems might slow the Devourer advance. Then the enemy began to learn. The Devourer machines analyzed every weapon, every tactic, every defensive strategy in real time. Within hours, they had not only adapted to Keeper technology, but had improved upon it. The mechanical defenders found themselves fighting mirror versions of their own ships, but faster, stronger, and completely ruthless. Elder Keeper Unit 001, the oldest artificial mind in the galaxy, sent its final transmission as the swarm consumed its homeworld. We have failed. The Devourers are beyond our comprehension. May the younger races find what we could not, a way to stop them. Panic spread through the Galactic Consortium like wildfire. Emergency sessions convened on every major world as leaders tried to comprehend the scope of the threat. Battle reports flooded in from across the galaxy, entire sectors going dark, billions of lives consumed, and most terrifying of all, the Devourer fleet growing larger with each victory. In the Great Assembly Chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in desperate conference. The air crackled with tension as species that had been enemies for millennia united in the face of extinction. Our combined fleets number in the millions, reported Admiral Korthax of the Vorthak Navy. But every engagement only makes them stronger. They learn from our tactics faster than we can develop new ones. The Lumini High Command pulse with frustrated energy. Our most powerful weapons feed their growth. We're not fighting an enemy, we're feeding it. As world after world fell to the mechanical plague, the impossible became thinkable. Junior Counselor Ithek of the Vorthak delegation stood trembling before the assembled might of the galaxy. There's one option we haven't considered, Ithek's crystalline voice barely carried across the chamber. The humans, they fight differently than we do. Perhaps. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Crystal formations blazed with outrage while energy beings flashed patterns of disgust. Mechanical voices rose in synchronized protest. Absolutely not, declared Prime Counselor Zathan. We will not beg aid from primitives. Those barbaric creatures couldn't comprehend technology this advanced, pulsed the Lumini representative. But as the days passed and more systems fell, even pride began to crack under the weight of survival. The Devourer swarm had consumed nearly a quarter of the galaxy, and their advance showed no signs of slowing. Every conventional strategy had failed. Every advanced weapon had been turned against its creators. In a closed session attended only by the highest levels of government, the unthinkable was discussed. After heated debate that lasted for days, a single encrypted message was prepared and sent toward the quarantined Sol system. The transmission was brief and coded to appear as stellar background radiation, but its meaning was clear to those who knew how to decode it. The galaxy faces extinction. Help us stop the Devourers, and we will reconsider your status in the consortium. On Earth, Admiral Robert Thompson received the message in his underground command center. Around him, human officers and scientists studied intelligence reports about the mechanical plague that was consuming the galaxy. They had been monitoring the crisis through hidden observation posts and long-range sensors. Thompson's weathered face showed no surprise as he read the alien plea for help. Humanity had spent 3 years preparing for the day when the galaxy might need them. Now that day had come. His response was transmitted immediately, using the same hidden channels that had allowed human expansion beyond the quarantine. Message received and understood. The human fleet is mobilizing. We're on our way. Across Earth and its secret colonies, the word went out. It was time for humanity to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The Caridian Nexus was supposed to be the galaxy's last stand. Located at the intersection of 3 major hyperspace routes, it controlled access to the core worlds where billions of beings waited for news of their fate. If the Devourers captured the Nexus, nothing would stop them from consuming the heart of galactic civilization. Captain Michael Brooks stood on the bridge of the Asterisk-defiant Asterisk, watching through the view screen as the largest Devourer command structure ever encountered slowly approached the system. The mechanical monstrosity was the size of a small moon, its surface crawling with millions of smaller units that constantly rebuilt and improved its design. Around it, a swarm of lesser Devourer ships moved like protective insects, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Cortex, reported Lieutenant Jennifer Clark from the communication station. Her voice carried the strain of 3 days of continuous battle as the combined forces of the galaxy made their final desperate stand. Brooks nodded grimly. Put him through. The holographic image of the Vorthak Admiral materialized above the bridge, his crystalline form flickering with patterns of exhaustion and defeat. Captain Brooks, our forces are in full retreat. The enemy has adapted to every weapon we possess. I'm ordering all remaining ships to fall back to the inner systems. Around the bridge, human officers exchanged glances. They had all seen the battle reports. The greatest military force in galactic history had been shattered in less than 6 hours. Consortium ships that had dominated space for millennia were being torn apart faster than they could retreat. Admiral, what about the command structure? Brooks asked, pointing to the massive Devourer ship on his tactical display. If we let that thing reach the core worlds. It's hopeless, Captain, Cortex replied, his voice resonating with crystal harmonics of despair. Our analysis indicates that destroying it would require the combined firepower of our entire fleet. We no longer have a fleet capable of such an assault. Brooks studied the readout showing his small human force, 37 ships of various sizes, most of them converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons. Against them stood the most powerful enemy the galaxy had ever faced, supported by thousands of adaptive warships. Sir, we're heavily outnumbered, Lieutenant Clark reported from her station. Consortium forces are requesting we withdraw immediately. Brooks looked around his bridge crew, men and women who had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never return home. Engineer Tom Reynolds was already calculating reactor overload procedures. Weapons Officer Lisa Parker was preparing the ship's complement of nuclear mines. Navigator Ben Foster was plotting courses that would maximize damage to enemy formations. Negative, Brooks said firmly. This ends here. What happened next will be remembered as either the greatest act of heroism or the most reckless display of primitive savagery in galactic history. Brooks opened the channel to the entire human fleet, his voice calm and determined. All ships, this is Brooks. We've got one shot at this. The aliens fight with fancy weapons and proper tactics. That's not going to work here. So we're going to do what humans do best. We're going to improvise. The first phase of the assault looked like madness to the retreating consortium forces. Instead of engaging the Devourer escort ships in traditional combat, human vessels accelerated directly toward them at maximum speed. The Devourers, programmed to analyze and counter incoming weapons, couldn't adapt to ships that were being used as guided missiles. Captain Rachel Stone of the Thunderbolt was the first to ram her destroyer into a Devourer cruiser. The impact tore both ships apart, but the explosion created a gap in the enemy formation that other human ships immediately exploited. Her final transmission was a war cry that echoed across the human fleet. For oath! The Devourer swarm began to adapt, reconfiguring their hulls to better absorb impact damage. But the humans switched tactics instantly. Ships began releasing clouds of metallic debris that clogged Devourer sensors, while others fired crude nuclear weapons at point-blank range, sacrificing themselves to inflict maximum damage. Colonel Frank Wilson led a squadron of converted mining ships in a desperate assault on the command structure itself. His vessels, loaded with industrial explosives and mining charges, burrowed into the Devourer hull like metallic termites. One by one, they detonated their cargo from within, creating massive breaches in the seemingly impenetrable armor. Brooks, this is Wilson, came the transmission from inside the enemy ship. We've opened a path to the core structure, but our ships are breaking apart. You need to move now. The Defiant and 5 remaining human vessels accelerated toward the breach, their hulls already glowing from enemy fire. Around them, the last of the human fleet was sacrificing itself to keep the path clear. Ships piloted by single volunteers rammed into Devourer defenders, buying precious seconds with their lives. So, massive structural damage on decks 5 through 12, reported Engineer Reynolds. Hull integrity at 30% and falling. Brooks watched the tactical display as his ship penetrated deeper into the Devourer command structure. The enemy's adaptive systems were trying to seal the breach, but human ships kept forcing their way through, each one adding to the growing damage. All ships. This is Brooks. The captain announced as the Defiant reached the central core, a pulsing mass of quantum processors that controlled the entire Devourer network. It's been an honor serving with you all. Lieutenant Clark looked up from her station, her face pale but determined. So, evacuation pods are ready. Brooks shook his head. No time. Everyone, manual reactor overload. Full power to the fusion cores. The human crew worked with practiced efficiency, their hands steady despite the knowledge of what came next. They had trained for this moment, prepared for the possibility that victory would require the ultimate sacrifice. Overload initiated, Reynolds reported. 60 seconds to detonation. Through the view screen, Brooks could see the alien fleets in the distance, watching in stunned amazement as the primitive humans accomplished what their advanced technology could not. The Devourer command structure was beginning to convulse as feedback from the damaged core spread through its network. Tell Earth, Brooks said quietly to the communications officer. Tell them we remembered what it means to be human. The explosion that followed lit up the entire system like a newborn star. The fusion reactors of 6 human ships, overloaded simultaneously at the heart of the Devourer network, created a cascade failure that raced through every connected unit. One by one, the mechanical plague ships went dark and began to drift lifeless through space. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as 3,000 human heroes vaporized themselves to save worlds they had never seen, for species that had rejected them as primitives. In that moment, the definition of civilization itself changed forever. The silence that followed the destruction of the Devourer fleet lasted for exactly 17 minutes. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched their screens in disbelief as a mechanical plague that had consumed quarter of known space simply stopped existing. The impossible had happened. The primitive from Earth had succeeded where the greatest civilizations in history had failed. Then the celebrations began. On Vorthek Prime, crystal beings who had lived for thousands of years wept tears of liquid light for the first time in their existence. The Lumini Energy Collective, normally composed and logical, erupted in chaotic patterns of joy that painted entire star systems in brilliant colors. Even the ancient keepers, mechanical minds that had processed data for millions of years, found their circuits overwhelmed by something their databases had no classification for: hope. The emergency session of the Galactic Consortium became something unprecedented in galactic history. Representatives who had fled their homeworlds in terror now returned to chambers filled with a mixture of celebration and profound shame. The same beings who had dismissed humanity as barbaric primitives were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had been saved by the species they had rejected. Prime Counselor Zathan of the Vorthak stood before the assembled delegates, his crystalline form flickering with patterns of deep remorse. Fellow beings of the consortium, we gather today not just to celebrate victory, but to acknowledge our failure. 3,000 humans died to save our worlds. They gave their lives to beings who had called them unworthy of civilization. The chamber remained silent as Zathan continued. I was present when we denied their membership. I voted to quarantine their system. I declared their species too primitive to join our alliance. Today, I stand corrected by the greatest act of heroism our galaxy has ever witnessed. The first monument was erected on Vorthak Prime within days of the victory. Standing 200 feet tall and carved from the rarest singing crystal, it depicted Captain Michael Brooks in his final moments, hand on the reactor controls that would save the galaxy. When starlight hit the crystal's surface, it sang with harmonies that carried across continents, a song of sacrifice that moved even the most logical minds to tears. But the monuments were only the beginning. Across the galaxy, species that had never honored outsiders began commemorating human heroes. On the energy world of Lumina, the collective consciousness composed a great song of Earth, a symphony of light and energy that told the story of humanity's courage. The song was so beautiful that it became a pilgrimage destination, with beings traveling from across the galaxy just to experience it. The ancient keepers, who had watched civilizations rise and fall for eons, made an announcement that shook the foundations of galactic society. Elder Unit Prime, oldest artificial mind in existence, spoke words that were recorded in every language and transmitted to every world. In our vast archives, we have observed 4,000 to 7,000 species reach technological advancement. Of these, only humans have demonstrated the ultimate form of evolution, the willingness to die for strangers. Today, we formally declare humanity the first among equals, teachers of what it truly means to be civilized. The transformation wasn't just ceremonial. Within months, human military advisors were stationed on every major world, teaching alien forces tactics that had proven effective against impossible odds. The concept of fighting not just to win, but to protect others, spread through military academies that had taught conventional warfare for millennia. Young Vorthak warriors learned about flanking maneuvers and improvised weapons. Lumini energy beings discovered the power of coordinated sacrifice. Keeper mechanical units began incorporating concepts of loyalty and brotherhood into their programming. The galaxy's military doctrine underwent a complete revolution based on principles that humans had considered basic common sense. The changes went deeper than military strategy. On worlds where beings had lived in isolation for centuries, community centers were established based on human social models. Species that had never experienced concepts like friendship or family bonds began to understand what humans had died protecting. Captain Janet Reed, one of the few surviving commanders from the Caridian battle, found herself teaching philosophy to crystal beings on Vorthak University. You keep asking about our tactics, she told her crystalline students. But tactics weren't what won that battle. We won because we believed that protecting others was more important than protecting ourselves. The formal establishment of the new Galactic Alliance took place in the same chamber where humanity had once been rejected. But this time, Admiral Robert Thompson stood not as petitioner, but as a unanimous choice for Supreme Commander of the Alliance. Thompson looked out over the assembled representatives, beings of crystal, energy, and metal who had once considered humanity beneath their notice. Now they waited for his word with a respect reserved for legends. Fellow beings, Thompson began, his weathered human face carrying the weight of recent losses. We didn't come to your galaxy seeking to conquer. We came seeking to belong. 3 years ago, you told us we weren't worthy of membership in your civilization. The chamber remained completely silent, hanging on every word. You were right, Thompson continued, surprising many delegates. We weren't worthy of your old civilization, one based on technological superiority and cold logic. But today, we have the chance to build something better. An alliance based not on who has the best weapons, but on who's willing to use them to protect others. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, leadership was granted not to the most advanced species, but to the one that best embodied the values the Alliance wanted to represent. Years passed, and the legend grew. Human names became common across alien worlds as parents named their children after Earth's heroes. The story of the species that had been rejected by the universe only to save it was told in crystal halls, energy theaters, and mechanical archives. Children of every race learned that true strength came not from superior technology, but from the courage to stand when others fell. The Battle of Caridian Nexus became more than history. It became the foundation myth of a new galactic civilization, one where being human meant something that transcended species boundaries. In the end, humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than advanced technology or military victory. They had given them a soul. ***, the END ***.